One of the most talked about WNBA games of the season ended with an 86-90 loss for Chicago, but the final score almost feels like the least interesting part of what happened inside the United Center. Because before Indiana walked out with the win, DiJonai Carrington was ejected. Sophie Cunningham became the center of a national argument. Caitlin Clark found herself at the center of another officiating controversy. And social media turned one hard basketball play into a much bigger debate. And the timing makes it even more interesting. Indiana and Chicago are scheduled to meet again on August 23rd. So whatever happened in Chicago on August 8th may not be finished yet. The game barely had time to settle before everything exploded. Cunningham was running out in transition after Indiana forced a turnover, and Carrington came from behind as Cunningham went toward the basket. The defensive play ended with Carrington making heavy contact high on Cunningham, sending her to the floor. The officials initially called a common foul, but after reviewing the play, they upgraded it to a flagrant 2 and ejected Carrington. The league's definition matters here, because a flagrant 2 isn't simply another hard foul. It is reserved for contact judged to be unnecessary and excessive. And once the officials reached that conclusion after review, Carrington's night was over. And that decision instantly changed the atmosphere inside the building. Cunningham wasn't just involved in another ordinary possession anymore. She was at the center of a game that was already being played under a microscope. Because Indiana and Chicago have become one of the WNBA's most closely watched matchups. Every physical play gets magnified, every reaction gets replayed, and every post-game comment can become another headline. But the foul itself wasn't the end of the controversy. It was barely the beginning. After the ejection, Carrington posted "white privilege" on social media and tagged the Fever. That turned a basketball argument into something much broader. Almost immediately, Cunningham later rejected the idea that the play was about race, saying she believed the foul deserved the ejection and that there was no reason to make the incident about race. That distinction is important because there are really two separate arguments here. One is whether Carrington's foul deserved to be upgraded. The other is what Carrington meant by her social media response. Those two questions shouldn't automatically be treated as the same thing. The officials made their decision after reviewing the contact. Carrington was ejected. Cunningham disagreed with the racial framing, and Carrington's post added another layer that the basketball itself didn't have. Suddenly, people weren't only debating a foul. They were debating motivation, identity, rivalry, and whether the entire Fever-Sky relationship had become too emotionally charged. And that's exactly why this matchup keeps producing headlines. Indiana and something happened in Chicago that turned one WNBA game into a much bigger controversy than anyone expected. A hard foul sent Sophie Cunningham crashing to the floor. DiJonai Carrington was ejected. Then Carrington's social media post pushed the story into an entirely different conversation. And somehow, that still wasn't the end of the drama. Because later in the same game, Caitlin Clark found herself involved in another controversial officiating decision that could have cost her the next game. The league eventually reversed that call. Meanwhile, Indiana kept playing. Kelsey Mitchell kept scoring. And the Fever walked out of the United Center with a 90-86 victory. But the most interesting part isn't simply what happened. It's why this particular game became such a lightning rod for the WNBA. It started with Cunningham running out in transition. Indiana had created an opportunity, and she was attacking the basket with a clear path ahead. Then Carrington came from behind and made heavy contact high on Cunningham. As she went up for the shot, Cunningham went down hard. The officials initially called a common foul, but after taking another look at the play, they upgraded it to a flagrant 2. That decision immediately ended Carrington's night. And this is where the argument began. A flagrant 2 isn't just a routine foul. The officials determined that the contact was unnecessary and excessive, enough to warrant an ejection. From Indiana's perspective, that was the obvious conclusion. From Chicago's side, it was a physical play that happened during a competitive possession. But regardless of which side you were on, one thing was impossible to ignore. The game had changed. Cunningham wasn't just another player who had taken a hard hit. She was now at the center of the biggest moment of the night. And Carrington was heading to the locker room. Then the social media fallout made everything even bigger. Carrington posted the words, "white privilege," and tagged the Indiana Fever. Almost immediately, The discussion moved beyond basketball. Cunningham later rejected the idea that the play should be framed around race. She said she believed the foul deserved the ejection and argued that bringing race into the situation wasn't necessary. That created two separate debates. The first was about the foul itself. Did Carrington cross the line? The officials said yes. The second debate was about Carrington's reaction afterward, and that one couldn't be settled by watching a replay. Now people were arguing about what the post meant, why it was made, and whether the entire situation had become part of a much larger rivalry between Indiana and Chicago. That's what makes this matchup so fascinating. The Fever and Sky aren't just two teams meeting during the regular season anymore. Every time they play, the attention is enormous. And Caitlin Clark is a major reason why. Wherever Clark goes, cameras follow. Every hard defensive possession gets analysts